Welcome to First Things First. I'm Brooke Blurt, my pronouns are she and her.
I'm Matty Mills, my pronouns are he and him. And before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. And today, for me, that's the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation.
And for me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Cooler Nation. Let's get into it.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just read the title of our new podcast.
Right?
First Things First.
It kind of rolls off the tongue, but it feels like, what's the go? What's good? What's happening? It feels exciting.
It is exciting. It covers all bases and it really says so much more about who we are as people.
Not that Not So PG didn't, but we're in a new era. And I feel like 2024 is like, so they say this is the year of the 8, which means infinity. So it's a really exciting year. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of like rebirth. Like, so 2024 add up to 8, obviously. You add all the numbers. 4 and 8 actually are really lucky numbers in the Chinese. Chinese
numerology?
Yes. So,
yes, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Infinity.
well, I mean, new podcast, new energy, super exciting. There was new vibes this morning. I came in and guess what was on my desk? A protein bar.
I think I could beat that.
Okay.
I've got, can I just say Natural Chip Co. honey soy chicken chips.
Ooh, shout
Harvest Snaps for the healthy galleys, which is not me. And an Oreo. So beat that.
Oh, shout out to our team for keeping us fed. Oh, look, now I'm just being thrown Freddo frogs. So, I mean, we're competing here.
New year, new snacks. That's my 2024 slogan this year.
She is a snack. But it feels so good to be back. I know that we had our first episode of 2024 go to air last week. But this week we are so excited because we get to share why we brought this new First Things First podcast title and new era, bringing it alive for our audience, but also it is our 50th episode today.
Yeah.
Can you believe we've recorded 50 episodes of the pod?
Well, when you look at the 50 episodes, like how much change and how much growth has happened in 50 episodes?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, over a period of a year and a bit, like our life has just gone forward, backwards, sidestep. Like we've been on a roller coaster of emotions. Like we've cried, we've been angry, we've been frustrated, we've gone through a referendum. Like so much has happened in like 50 episodes. Like could you imagine like our life being like, we have a podcast? Like it's crazy.
Also, we've been able to document the moment, share them with our audiences. And this is so cool because we're now at season 3, 50 episodes in, and we really have a timeline of documented events that we've been able to share on our podcast, which is so cool for even us to reflect on. But also, it's basically us journaling each week, our life, and sharing it with the world. So we're so excited to be able to continue to do that. But we want to chat about what prompted the name change.
Yes.
To First Things First and why that was important for us. What resonates with you, Brooke, with the name change?
I think because I've been a person that's really, I don't know, taken my story and have always like changed the narrative, I guess. Like I've always tried to rewrite what people think of me, and I guess like throughout the years of being in the media, I've always wanted to like set the record straight all the time. Like it's like I have to like, no, that's actually not true, or that's not real. This is, you know, and I felt like I've always had to like reclaim things back. Like I wrote Big Love to do that, and that felt really good. Then I think of First Things First, and I think, well, first things first, this is how it actually is.
Absolutely.
In the view of our eyes, our hearts, our minds, like, and then I want to share that, you know, that experience with other people. I think being a First Nations person, we were the first peoples of Australia. So I, you know, take pride in that. But I also think it's about like sharing, setting the record straight, like, this is our experiences. We want to share them. We want to know yours. And we're on a like crazy ass journey. Yeah. Like
this roller coaster doesn't stop, but I feel the exact same way.
No, you cannot get off this.
I feel the same way, sis. I feel like for me, it's really about understanding that you and I have been in spaces where we have been the first people, black and queer, to be in these spaces and take up space in certain areas of this industry, but certain areas of our worlds as well. And we're not afraid to kick down those doors, and we're not afraid to jump those hurdles and smash down those barriers that have been in place for our people. So it's, it's daunting, and we know what the challenges are that come with that, being the first people and in those spaces, but the people who are trying to always push forward and change, I suppose, what the future looks like for our people in this space. So we are so excited to continue to do that. I know that I love the idea of continuing to be the first in
many ways,
a lot of spaces that need inclusion, need diversity. And I know that it's sort of a big part of my heart to be able to open those doors, wedge them open, and make sure that mob keep on coming.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I was able to reflect over the holiday period and thinking about the choices that we make in our lives and how they can really change the trajectory of your life. And it can be one choice. And
choices. We don't really talk to them. And maybe we've made so many different choices in our life. And some have been, questionable, and some have been great. But those are the things that have changed our life. I think we don't talk to how much choices and opportunities and, creation, basically creating them first. Yeah. You don't just get them. They don't just happen.
No.
You have to create them. And that starts by taking the first step, whatever it is. It's crazy. Okay, can I ask you a quick question? So what are your maybe your top 2 or 3 things that have been the first of doing something that have been your favorite?
Yes. I think when I was really young, and the opportunity that changed my life was the fact that I had enough courage to write a letter to go to a school that had never had an Aboriginal person attend that school because of the level of privilege that school held, but also the financial burden of, paying $40,000 a year for a kid to go to that school.
Wow.
And this is not long ago. This is in 2009. So being the first person to break down that barrier and be the first First Nations kid at that school allowed me to actually leave a path for others. Now, there are 4 scholarships each year that are given to kids from community who get to go and receive, a really high-level education, but also gets to change the dynamic of that school. And I felt like I was a bit of a guinea pig in that moment, but it was one of those first steps that I had to take to make sure that the rest of my life I had opportunity. And for me, that opened my world up to a much bigger landscape of opportunity. And while I was at that school, I was the youngest person to ever win a Deadly Award, which, was a first for me. And that's something that I hold on to dearly. And I was, one of the first, the first presenter on, First Nations presenter on Getaway. And for me, that's something that I hold close to my heart because I know how much that means. We spoke about it, people inside in jail were watching me and feeling inspired and reached out and told me that story. So I feel like I've always been the person who will push the boundaries. Sometimes I question myself and I say, am I pushing too far? Am I too much? But this year, I'm not making myself smaller.
No.
I'm making myself bigger. Yeah. And first things first, I'm going to continue to believe in myself. And that's what's led me to be able to be the first in many places so far. But what about you? I know you have a lot of firsts and super inspiring, but one of them, obviously the major things, was being the first First Nations bachelorette in the world.
Crazy. And it's not these are not in order, but that would be definitely one of my favorites, is being, the first First Nations bachelorette globally and the first bisexual bachelorette as well. It was just crazy how many barriers, and I guess breaking down what people assume about bisexuality and kind of changing people's minds and perceptions around what First Nations people look like and what they act like. And it was just crazy. I think that's probably one of my top tier. But I think, going back to school, I was one of the first people in my family to graduate high school and actually go to university. So for me, that's, so it could be so minor to other people who have, that privilege of doing that. But I, living at a home and just finishing high school was so difficult, but being the first to graduate in my family and being the first to go to university in my family was just like a really massive highlight of my life and career. So I definitely don't take those for granted, because without those experiences, I guess I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't be so aspirational, and I probably wouldn't be so passionate, and I wouldn't probably be like motivated, I think, to like want to do more and be more. And just like what you said, like I don't want to be too much, but because like I want to be enough for the right people.
Yeah. I remember at the end of last year we were talking about our goals.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about, the phrase, if you can't be it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
I understand why that phrase is alive and well and why people use it. But I've always thought, if I can't see it, I can still be it.
100%.
Because I can be the first.
You can create it.
I can be the first. I don't need to see somebody do it for me. I've always had that mindset. So, for mob who think representation is super important, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
But if you don't see what you want to see with representation, create that space for yourself. Be that space for others in the future as well. So, I'm so excited that we get to rebrand this pod. It feels like our conversations are going to be deeper.
We love
We're
going to
have big D&M vibes, but also we're not going to forget the fun. We're going to have lots of laughs.
Yeah.
We have so much good
cries,
stuff.
Okay? A few cries.
Yeah, well,
we don't mind a few tears.
Look, I am always a shoulder. If I'm here. But I feel like this podcast isn't too far from what we've already established with our audience. It's just us growing up, going deeper, and setting the record straight with First Things First.
This time of year is always really hard. It's the first month of the year. You're establishing those goals. You're establishing like what you want from 2024. But it also is, on the other side of that, quite a sort of, I wouldn't know say if turmoil is the right word, but it can be a really difficult month for a lot of mob, because it also marks a day that we call Survival Day or Invasion Day. I prefer personally Invasion Day. I do like the word survival, and I think it resonates with so much. That's how our people have survived for many years. But we also have to remember that this was the day that a lot of things changed for a lot of Aboriginal people. Yeah.
And whether you call it Survival Day or you call it Invasion Day, it is a day of mourning. And that's what it should be recognised across the country as, whether you're First Nations or not, because this holds significant impact for what the future of this country looked like from that day onwards.
Yeah.
And really established a lot of the challenges and obstacles and stereotypes and displacement that
misinterpretation as well.
Absolutely. Has faced since that day. And First Nations people across the board can agree that this is a day that it's a significant day for us in terms of our mourning. There needs to be a re-education piece around what it means for the rest of the country. Yeah. Because unfortunately, there has been so much about this day that has resonated with a celebration aspect of our country and celebrating colonisation, but also celebrating what it means to be Australian. But that doesn't include everyone.
Yeah.
How the wider community feel about how it feels to be Australian definitely a lot of the time doesn't feel the same for First Nations people across this country. And that's because of the brutal colonial history that we've had to face and that we still have to overcome every day of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot of miseducation around what January 26 actually is.
Yeah.
And why I've seen so many videos online where people are so ill-informed, the general public, on what this day is and what it stands for and what it represents.
Yeah. And that's Jan 26. And I think I personally want to separate Jan 26 from a day that we know that is hugely significant and Australia Day. Because I think, Australia Day personally hasn't really been around for that long, right? And people affiliate Jan 26 with that celebration of Australia Day. They think if Jan 26, they slapped on Australia Day on that day. They said, yep, this is a day of celebration. And everyone was like, yep. Well, not everyone, obviously not mob, but like everyone's like, yeah, cool. We want to celebrate our beautiful country. Mm-hmm. And so that was only in 1994. So like basically Australia Day hasn't really been around for that long. But on being put on a day that actually has like so much depth and so much history, it just doesn't feel right. It's kind of like putting this like really
polishing a turd?
Yes. Oh my God. That is like the right analogy, what I was trying to say. Yeah. I was picturing like this really messy thing and then this like little bow being at the top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was thinking.
What glitters isn't gold,
You know what
darling?
reminded me of like those ugly fucking puddings that you get at Christmas time.
Christmas pudding.
Who
the fuck invented Christmas pudding? They are the most revolting tasting things on the planet. Like if I thought of celebration, I think they should be called funeral puddings because they taste like death. And like everyone can cry while they eat the pudding at the funeral.
You know what? Feel you on that. You know what? Fuck the puddings. But that's what I pictured was like this really ugly, disgusting, not saying like I'm describing our history as that, but like it has some really dark and really horrible moments. And so when you slap a little bow on it and say, hey, fucking celebrate this and fucking eat this, it's not fun. It's not fair. It's not okay. So that's what I kind of picture this Australia Day celebration thing to be, is like people were not realizing and understanding like the depth of what that date particularly is. And it's not been around for that long. I'm 95, baby. This was 94 that this bow was slapped on Australia.
Australia Day.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, close to 100 years ago, our community, First Nations people from across this country, asked for this day to be called a day of mourning.
Yes.
Because of the significance of it, because of the brutality of it, because of what that day was the start of. And I think that it is such a slap in the face to our community when the rest of the country is celebrating on that day. It feels like somebody is dancing on your grave. And for our community, the conversation has changed. I know that decades ago, there was conversations around changing the date, and now there is a further push to abolish the date. And I think that there are different parts of our community that represent different perspectives, and I think that in any community that is extremely possible and good, varying opinions. But at the moment, I definitely feel that there's more push towards abolishing the date, and I think that it's a powerful thing to do until the country learns what that day means to our community, and there is a collective understanding of how that day has impacted our community. And then we can find, when we get to a point when our nation has empathy for what we've been through as a community, collectively,
I think that's
then we can find a day where we can all celebrate.
Yeah, exactly. And there has been, like dates that have been, put out there to best celebrate.
May 8, mate.
Like fair enough. But then I think that's also covering an issue that is far deeper, I think. And the word that you used, I think, is education and empathy. Yeah. And I think our country really struggles, and this is an overgeneralization, but I think because I talk about it and I feel it on so many different levels. Like, I think education, and I think when it comes to First Nations education or First Nations people, it's like we're always constantly having to educate and having to change people's minds. And I'm just like, it's a bit exhausting sometimes when you feel like that. Like I have my Aboriginal friends, I have my non-Aboriginal friends. And even if my non-Aboriginal friends are from like Italian descent, if they come from a different culture, I am so intrigued and so interested in what their culture is, because I want to better understand them, and I want to better understand like where they come from and how they live, or like, find some like commonalities or something. So I find it really difficult when I think my friends know a lot about First Nations. They're huge allies. But it's the greater public. It's the public like that don't, it's like the how many percenters that fucking voted no in the referendum. Like it's those that you're feeling like you have to change their mind and have to like full presentation of First Nations culture just to like get them to understand.
Justifying your life and your hurt.
Right.
Is
especially
painful,
around this time.
Constantly.
Yeah. It's like literally scratching at a wound and making it bleed. Like, and I think like if I can just make that effort with my friends who are not from here as well, who are immigrants and come from all over the world, why is it so hard for just like non-Aboriginal people who live in Australia, have lived here, were born here, just to dig deeper and to seek a bit more education and information? Like, why is it so difficult for them?
I feel like I know a bit of why it's difficult for them, honestly. And I feel like, well, I think it's an easy one, and I think you'll agree with me. I think that the wider community outside of, white Australians, ethnic backgrounds, the migrant community, have come here and they severely want to fit in. They severely want to understand Australian culture. They severely want to find a place and feel like they belong. And through our education system, through government, for years, there hasn't been any truthful information about First Nations people or the impact of colonisation on First Nations people in this country. So it is a bit of indoctrination. They have this ability to want to connect, feel like they are Australian, and belong. And through that, they seek education, but the education that they're getting isn't truthful. No. And that's why blackfellas are fighting for truth-telling. And I remember when we were little, and I'm sure that you remember this too, when you were young and you're in high school and Australia Day came around, I participated. I wasn't aware of...
You didn't have a choice.
And I wasn't aware of the significant impact that it had on our people. But as I got older, was able to do my own research, the conversation was much more broad and sort of like, especially through social media, the conversation was able to be shared. You learn, right? Yeah. So I've learnt as a black fella, even when I was in high school, participating in Australia Day events, Australia Day carnivals, putting the Australian flag on my skin as little tattoos, fake tattoos, holding the flag. If you have the ability to learn and understand that, that once you learn and how much that triggers you as a First Nations person, I'm sure that a lot of us had that experience of not understanding and then coming to understand that a lot of the brutal colonisation has affected our parents, grandparents, and that's why we have a significant level of disadvantage in this country. When you understand that, Australia, the flag, actually triggers you.
It does.
You become disconnected from the idea that you are a part of the wider nation.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, we can't just accept the fact that, we are all Australian and everything's equal and everything's fair.
Oh, it happened so long ago. No, it didn't. It happened
so long ago when internally your spirit as a First Nations person is severely affected by and triggered by those events that flag represents. Yeah. And I now know that the only way that I will ever feel like I am an Australian is that the country shows me that they understand who I am as a First Nations person. Yeah. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially because of the true colours that this country has shown when it came to the referendum. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And that's why we're here, sis.
That's 100%.
That's me and you, Titta, and the rest of us.
Yeah,
but
that is actually a good, really good note to like end on, I think. Yeah, you speak to spirit as well. Like, people don't realize how much pride we carry as well. Like, yes, there's hurt and there's such a dark history, but we're actually such a proud people. Like, I walk into a room, I don't care if I'm the only black person in the room. Like, I do not give a shit. I'm like such a proud black fella. Like, I'm happy to share so much stuff about my culture, and like, I'll always be like that no matter who's in the room, why I'm in the room. Like, I just feel like people don't realize how proud we are as well. Like, we want change for First Nations people. Like, that's something that we fight for and we push for because we know how much harm is being done, and we want our people to not have to live with that burden and that carry that trauma and carry that like grievances. You know what I mean? It's always going to be there, but we're kind of creating and breaking some really great, like, I guess, generational cycles and, you know, breaking down doors, creating like opportunities for people. Like, yeah, imagine like, you know, we're only two people, you and I, but we want to do so much.
And you know what? We are only two people, but in this particular event and these sort of major things that our community are up against, we need allies.
We do.
And what the allies can do each year, if they're first things first. Oh, I love saying that. Oh, that feels good.
It sounds so good coming out of your mouth.
When I say first things first on this podcast, that's when you know I'm getting serious.
Oh, yeah.
What I want to say to the allies out there is that if you're thinking, well, how can I help? How can I shift the narrative? What is my role that I play in this country to ensure that First Nations people feel heard and seen even though the voice referendum didn't come through? Start here. First things first, on January 26th, do not celebrate Australia Day. Instead, shift towards learning about First Nations people on that day. It might be one day of the year, but if you can get yourself to a First Nations Survival Day Festival or Invasion Day Festival, instead of having your pool party with your sausages and your thongs and your beers and your Australian flag with your mates, go to a Survival Day event. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you go home and you crack a beer and have a good time with your friends, at least you went and hopefully learned something that day. But take it as an opportunity to seek out the community and learn something on that day, because we are a tough community, and this, let me tell you, this conversation ain't going to stop. This conversation will continue.
Yeah.
And if you think you're sick of it now,
in the 50th episode, you're going to get it at the 100th episode and the 200th episode. So just know that this conversation...
If colonisation did something to us, it gave us resilience.
Yes.
And not that I want to use that every day in my life, but we are a resilient mob, and we will continue this conversation until we get what this country needs and deserves, which is to find another way forward instead of celebrating Jan 26 on Australia Day on Jan 26.
If I'm not having this conversation, my children are having the conversation and their children are having the conversation, because until that day is abolished, I don't want to hear your shit. Like, your white ass shit. your white shit.
Oi, but look, that was real black. See? See how I go? Okay.
Let's
Invasion Day marches. Let's just quickly let these mob know where they can go. On January 26, you can go, if you're in Sydney or if you're in Melbourne, Gadigal or Naarm, there are Invasion Day marches that happen around the country. They happen in every state, even in some large country towns. Figure it out. Do your research, find out where they are. In Sydney, they're at 10 a.m. At Belmore Park, and in Melbourne, 10 a.m. from Parliament House. If you're in other states, I'm sure a quick Google will allow you to find out the details for that. Other than that, there are festivals that are celebrating our culture. And a lot of the time, these Invasion Day marches end up at these festivals. So you can go along to the march, and at the end of that march, you end up at a beautiful ceremony where there's music, culture, dancing, First Nations flair.
Literally. Flavor, spice, it's all there.
It's all there. And let me tell you, when you see black joy, it's something that is contagious.
Yeah.
And something that you want to see often and you want to be a part of. So please, if you're a listener and you're a part of our audience this year, let it go. Let the Australia Day idea go and go and, get some...
Immerse yourself into the mob.
Go and get some bush tucker. No, don't.
Immerse yourself into the culture and mob and know that, First Nations has a black history. Okay, let's talk about some good allyship that's actually happening just quickly maybe.
Yeah.
Some examples that we've seen recently in the shift of what good allyship looks like is massive organisations like Woolies and...
Aldi. I've seen that Bunnings is on the bandwagon, and I think there's another one coming, but I have the big secrets. I don't know, but I can feel it.
I can trust the feeling. This is a thing. People say,
trust.
I feel like I believe in like astrology, etc., but there's nothing more that I trust if someone's like a mum or a nan or someone who's got a feeling, you know? They got a feeling.
In the waters.
Anyways, talking about not feelings, but like good allyship, back to that, is that Woolies and I guess, you know, have decided to not stock Australia Day stuff.
Good on them.
So screw your flag. Not kidding. Well, not kidding. But screw your Haviana thongs and your Australia Day shit. Woolies said, nah, we stand with First Nations people and we good allies. Yeah. So, and Audi has followed suit. So, you know, they've taken... Audi's not even an Australian brand as well. So, you know, that's a global...
International ally, gold star.
Yes, we're here for it. We're here. So, yeah, I guess back to, you know, like these huge, you know, organisations that have realised that, you know, we want to support First Nations people and we're here to support them, that we don't want to support Jan 26.
Well, I also
Australia Day, sorry.
I think that if you think about it as an idea as to what they are trying to do, I think as a country we need to understand what do we represent and what are our true core values and what are the things we hold on to. In my mind, if the things that we are celebrating the most is having a barbecue and thongs and having a good old beer and the beach, those things are quite shallow compared to what you could hold on to, which is over 60,000 years of culture and be proud of. So let's think about that moving forward. What, as a nation, are we going to hold on to as the fundamental core of our country? Mm-hmm. Is it our First Nations culture, which is over 60,000, 80,000 years old? Or is it your thongs, your beers, your beach and your barbecues? Because let me tell you, one thing hits your spirit and one thing is deep and one thing is tangible and really not that great.
This is also what I just don't understand. Is that really our culture? Mm-hmm. Australian culture is literally like barbecues and like beach. Like I get that we have the most stunning beaches. I lived in WA. Like I know, but
but you know what those beaches are part of? Land. And exactly. You know what land is at the core of? First Nations culture. So
truly.
What you're seeking out is already there. It's been established in the land and the people for thousands of years, hundreds of generations. So what you're looking for is connection and...
but also like sausages.
We've got it.
Like sausages aren't... They're more like, I guess like, you know, we got the most amazing seafood in Australia. Yes, I can understand some prawns, like some big...
chuck a shrimp on the barbie.
Truly. Can get that, fair enough.
Yeah,
but you know what? You know what our barbie was? Fire. Campfire. You know what those campfire was? Meeting places, yarning circles. You know what? Spirit. You know, I'm just...
And you know what this year's NAIDOC theme is? Keep the fire burning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bam. There we go.
See, he got my little thing. You know, we like telepathic. Like, I knew I was going there and I was like, I wonder if he's going to,
He's going to hit it. Bang, bang. Smashed it. Nail on the head. Well, you know what? I think that's enough of us giving these mob our energy today, because I feel like we've given them all that they need to hear when it comes to Jan 26. And I hope that we can get some mob across the line this year. You know,
I hope so. I think, you know, one of my goals and one of the things I would love to see, especially in my industry, is I'd really love to see like this is just something small. I know that I've you know, we spoke about what we'd love, you know, on a whole, but just something small. Like I want to see like these basic ass influencers at the rallies. Like get off your ass, stop fucking posting shit and bows and get to a rally. Like get some culture in you. Sorry, this is like...
I love it. No,
do you
I
know
love
what I mean?
it.
Like I'm like sick of seeing them like... You can get to the AO, you can watch a bit of tennis. So why can't you just like come to a rally, like spend some time with mob? Like why?
You know what? It comes down. It comes down to their privilege and their bias and their lack of understanding as to why that's important.
Okay, yes. No, we have given a lot of information. We've given you an opportunity, you know, and we're really like so grateful, I guess, for the people that do listen to us and follow us and do want to learn more and really like encourage our voices, because that's what we love. But we also, you know, encourage you to, use your voice and, you know, share and be an ally.
Yes, but you know what? That's all we have time for today. And I'm so excited because we get to say thanks for listening to First Things First. That just sounds powerful. I mean, we have a whole season ahead of us where we'll be able to say that, and I'm keen. But if you love what you hear, leave us a rating and a review.
And if you want us to cover anything on the pod, honestly, reach out to our socials. Like, we're so open with that, hey? So my handle is at Brooke.Blurton. You know that.
And my handle is at It's Matty Mills.
And welcome to First Things First.
First Things First, you mob. You stay deadly.
See ya.
Bye.